or present?
With arrow, the box with arrow, sir.
Arrow.
Yes. Yes, but
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, dears.
Something happened.
I think I could be booking up. Just a second. So this is window. Okay.
Sir, first you have to open your PPT.
I have opened and I have closed it. That's how it is there.
Means minimize it. Don't close
Yes.
it. Huh.
Yeah, minimized it. It is already available in the down PPT. Yes, it is there. Okay, select the tab to share.
Sir, if you click on that arrow box.
Yes, it has opened one. Choose what to share with meetgoogle.com. The site will be able to see the contents of your screen. It talks about Microsoft Edge tab, then window and entire screen.
Entire screen, sir.
Yes, entire screen. Okay. So that's done. And I am only seeing all of us there. I'm not getting...
I think it is window, sir.
It is window. Okay. Okay, window. I'll do one thing. Can I email those 3 slides to you? That may be the best way that I can. I'm sure you are not able to see.
You'll have to send it to Arya, I think so, then.
Yeah. Can you see? I'm sure even I'm not able to see this slide, which is fine. I thought there will be some.
Something is coming here. It showed us Rangasai presenting, then it went off.
No. It's not capturing the PPT. Let me give one more trial. Window. Can you see the PPT? No.
Not it, sir.
No, sir.
Not
No.
yet. Okay. Okay, never mind. I did spend some time in preparing a nice PPT on them, so that instead of just being audio, I thought I'll share. How about I emailing it to Arya? Will that be okay, Arya?
Yes, sir.
I'll just take.
Yeah.
Please share your Arya's email ID.
Yes, sir. Sir, Arya Geet, Arya G
A
G
R Y A R Y A
G
G.
E
Yes.
T H
TH.
at gmail.com.
Okay. Okay, it is. Yeah. I got it. Yes, I have it with you. Yeah. I've not put any subject or anything. I've just sent the.
It's
PPT.
fine, sir. Yeah.
Just three of them. Yeah. There are three of them, Arya. That's right. That's right. That is the first slide. And then the second one, specifically about Andy. Can you switch the second slide? Yes. And then after I finish telling about Andy, then it will be next Lori. That's right. That's right. Thank you. I mean, sounds good. It's good. Thank you. I think fair enough.
Are you able to hear?
Yes.
Okay, sir. I just wanted to make sure that.
Has Dr. Andy come in?
Not yet, ma'am. So they
Uh,
rejoining soon, ma'am. So
They are there. Yes, I can see them.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning. Good evening.
good evening. Good evening.
Can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Very well. Hello,
We
sir.
are
Hello,
so
ma'am.
sorry. On our calendar, it said 8 a.m. Eastern. So very sorry, but
It's okay, sir. Sorry for the misunderstanding. Yeah.
we cannot hear you.
Hello. Am I audible to you, sir?
One sec.
Hello.
Yes, now we hear you. Sorry, our technology.
Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rangasai, sir, can we start the program?
Yes, sure.
And PowerPoint now.
Good evening, all. Welcome to the ISAC India chapter webinar series. Today's topic for the webinar is use of PECs for language and communication development. So without further delay, I am requesting Professor Rangasai sir to welcome our guest, our speakers for today.
Yes. Thank you so much. Can we go with the first slide, please? You can
Yes, sir.
start
Yes,
off
sir.
with the slideshow. And we have a wonderful couple with us who have done extensive job in popularizing alternate and augmented communication, and with a special focus on PECs and as well as on behavior analysis strategies. So I think I'm so proud to be introducing this action-oriented couple for. It's amazing that they have together combined both at work and also in life, and then have contributed so much to AAC strategies. So with this, I think I have great pleasure in introducing Dr. Andy. Can you move to the next slide, please?
Yes, sir.
So Andy Bondi holds a PhD and has almost 50 years of experience. Can we go for full screen so that all can read it? If you can do that, will be great. Working with children and adults with ASD and related developmental issues, understandably so. For more than a dozen years, he served as the director of statewide public school program for students with autism spectrum disorders. Amazing. I can imagine how much of knowledge and experience he would have gained in that particular period. He and his wife, Lori Frost, pioneered the development of the picture exchange communication system, of which around the world we all keep using them. Both Andy and Lori designed the pyramid approach to education, of which we are likely to learn also more, as a comprehensive combination of broad spectrum behavior analysis, and functional communication strategies. I must say that Andy is very fond of Dr. Skinner, and he has been wanting to go along with those lines, and I'm not surprised at all. Amazed the way he has gone about. And both husband and wife, Lori, whom we have here, they are co-founders of Pyramid Educational Consultants Incorporated, an internationally based team of specialists with offices in 16 countries in the world. Can you imagine? Because they both have had it as a great passion right from their college days to be working in this area. So that is a point to be underlined by youngsters who are listening to this, his talk today. Uh, each team in 16 countries have specialists from many fields working together to promote the integration of the principles of applied behavior analysis within functional activities, including an emphasis on developing functional communication skills. We are looking forward to be enrolled in such activities, Dr. Andy. Dr. Andy is the vice chair of the board of directors for the prestigious Cambridge Center for Behavioral Studies. We are so pleased that you are here. He was the recipient of the 2012 Society for Advancement of Behavior Analysis (SABA) Award for international dissemination of behavior analysis. So we have great pleasure in welcoming you, sir. And the next person, I think I'll go ahead and introduce Lori also, so that their talk can go uninterrupted. And it is also difficult to split their CV. Their contributions have been together. So therefore, next slide, if you can move. Lori Fast is Vice President and co-founder of Pyramid Educational Consultants Incorporated. Please, it is my limitation that I have put in only a few lines here, but it is not that Lori has contributed probably far more fundamental in the development of these activities. For over 40 years of experience working with individuals with autism and related developmental disabilities, which I want to emphasize: home, school, clinic, and in vocational settings. So that is the kind of specialty that we are looking at as a specialist in speech here and AAC. Unique, she has been driving force behind creating the picture exchange communication system, unique AAC system that allows individuals with limited communication abilities to initiate communication with the teachers, parents. I mean, we all know what it really means. She's co-author of PEC's Training Manual, second edition. Ms. Frost has a wealth of background in functional communication training and applied behavior analysis. She has assisted in the development of several training packages designed to teach language and academic skills. Ms. Frost received her BA in speech pathology and audiology from the University of Arkansas and MS in speech and language pathology from the University of North Carolina and Chapel Hill in 1982. She has worked in many public and private school settings as speech pathologist. As a pyramid consultant, Ms. Frost has traveled all over the world teaching workshops on functional communication, PECs, the pyramid approach to education, and team collaboration. And it gives me such a great pleasure in introducing both of you, and we look forward to listening to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, again, our humble apologies for the time issue. But we're very excited and very honored to have this opportunity to talk to so many people in India. This is a wonderful opportunity for us. Is our screen showing?
Not it, sir.
It says click to resume. No.
Is our screen showing now? Our slide?
I'm sorry, not it, sir.
Just click on it. Click. Yes.
There's one slide showing, which is the introduction, I think.
Okay.
Arya, is it possible for you to enlarge the thing so that you can remove the others and just focus on them?
I have closed the other things, ma'am.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So we thought we would give a little bit of the background of the development of PECs, as well as talk about some of the innovative aspects, some of the
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. We are not seeing your slide. So can you share it?
trying to.
Yeah, next to that microphone and video, you can see a box with an arrow, upward arrow.
Mm-mm.
Yes, it's coming, sir.
Okay. Sorry, this is a new platform for us.
Okay.
Okay. So Lori and I grew up in very, very different situations. I'm a New York City boy. Lori grew up in the mountains. So I thought buildings were tall. And then I got to realize what Lori got to look at all the time growing up. In high school, she was an excellent student. And I was not as excellent a student. She became the valedictorian. I played lots of sports. But we got to meet in 1985 in a little state of Delaware, which is a tiny little state kind of between New York City and Washington, D.C. And we were working initially in some classrooms at an elementary school. That is me early on. Yes, I used to enjoy wearing a beard, but we worked with lots of very, very young children, 2 years old through 21 years old. And this is one of our very young learners early on. Materials that we were making were, we would take paper and cut it out, and Lori would teach us how to laminate it and draw on it. And it was flimsy, but the best we could do. Since that time, we've figured out how to develop products that last a little longer with better plastic and other materials. Things look a little more attractive, but the function remains the same. One of our first international trips was in 1992. We were invited to a program, the Ann Sullivan Center in Lima, Peru, because they heard us talk at a conference and realized that what we were doing with pictures would help their learners tremendously. So we went to Peru and started to do some training, and that led to the first publication describing parts of the picture exchange communication system. Now we present all over the world. As we said, we have 16, actually just out of the 17th office, presented in countries around the world, including India. And last year we got to celebrate our staff with a fun time in Paris. And the key for us is that teaching PECs is focused on good teaching strategies. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the elements, and Lori's going to talk a little bit about the history of how we first developed PECs.
Thanks, Andy. When I was working in this program for autistic children, I met a young boy when he was 3 years old, and I was considering myself a traditionally trained speech pathologist. When I was working with a child who didn't talk, my goal was to teach him to talk. And all of the strategies I tried with this little boy were not working. He did attend this public school. He was he was almost 4 years old when I met him. He had no functional communication skills. He liked to scratch people, and he also was engaging in some self injurious behavior, which was alarming to me because he would attempt to hurt himself. And what Andy pointed out to me was that he has no way of communication. He is acting out because nobody understands what he wants, what he needs. He had been in speech therapy in the past, very short term. His behaviors were so severe that he was discharged from many speech programs. But because I was new to the field of autism, I started off by trying to teach him to talk. The only sound I could get him to make was screaming. He screamed a lot. I tried to do sign language with him, and he had very poor fine motor skills. And he was very frustrated if I tried to teach him how to sign things like drink or eat. I had a history of working with kids with cerebral palsy, and we were teaching them to point to pictures on a display. And this young boy, I could not teach him to isolate a finger to point to a specific picture on a communication board. And as I was attempting to implement all of these strategies with him, he continued to be a very unhappy little boy. And one of the ways he expressed his unhappiness was by scratching people, hitting people, running away. As I said, his only reliable sound was screaming. He could not imitate the signs I was teaching him. He could not imitate oral motor actions. He could not imitate sounds I was making for him. And he was very reactive to if I tried to touch his hands to help him make signs for sign language. When I did put a display of pictures on the table in front of him, he would hit the pictures rather than point to a specific picture. And he also had a very, very stereotypical behavior. He would tap surfaces all around the classroom. So sometimes when he was tapping the pictures on the display, I didn't know if he was tapping because that's what he enjoyed doing or if he was trying to communicate. I tried to teach him a very isolated picture point system, and that made him very angry. And he would engage in some self-injurious behaviors. As I said, I tried to create a communication board that had pictures of things that he liked, but I was having difficulty interpreting which picture he was meaning to touch. And working with Andy one day, what I started learning was a lot of behaviors can be interpreted as communication behaviors. But with this little boy, Bob, the problem we were encountering was he would engage in a lot of these tapping behaviors when he was alone. So it became clear he wasn't using them to communicate. So
Interact.
He wasn't using them to interact. So when I think about communication, let's say this is a little girl trying to reach that doll on the top shelf. She has several strategies for reaching the doll. A lot of my preschool learners would climb on top of the shelves to get access to the doll. Climbing and reaching for the doll was not communication, because what we know about communication is it involves two people. So if somebody stood between her and the doll, she had several options. The first thing she traditionally did was move the man out of the way and climb on the shelves to get to the doll. But communication involves doing something to somebody else. So in this scenario, she could talk to him, she could use sign language with him, she could point to a picture, she could give a picture, but communication involves interacting with him. Her climbing on the shelf by herself was not communication. Pushing him out of the way was not communication. But doing something to him that caused him to give her the doll was what we would call communication. So communication can take many forms. We can speak, we can gesture, we can use sign language, we can point to a picture, or we can give a picture. But of all of these options, giving a picture to someone guarantees interaction. So when I was first working with Bob, the thing he liked most of all was tiny cars. And I had a box of cars. If I put the box of cars in front of him, he would rustle through all of the balls and attempt to find the one he wanted. So rather than teaching him to point to a car picture on a display of many pictures, what we decided to do was to isolate one picture, and to make that one picture interactive, what we taught him to do was to give the picture to somebody. Teaching him to give a picture, I could not tell him, give me the picture. I could not gesture, give me the picture. So what we decided to do was Andy sat behind him, and when Bob was trying to reach for the cars that he wanted, Andy would instead teach him to pick up the picture, reach to me, and give the picture to me. That was interactive. And that's what became essentially the picture exchange communication system. Bob's progress as the speech language pathologist and the behavior analyst tried to expand his language was essentially how we created the PECS protocol. The PECS protocol is divided into 6 phases. We start with phase 1 in teaching our learners how to approach somebody and do something. That's essentially what a 12 to 15-month-old child is doing. A child at home knows that if they can't get something on the top shelf, they go get mom. They might drag mom across the room. And sometimes our young learners are also pushing mom's arm up to the top shelf in order to get access to the item.
While looking at mom.
While looking at mom. And eventually, typically developing kids start using single words to tell mom, doll. What we then taught Bob to do within the PECS protocol was go find somebody to communicate with. So we taught him to locate a communication partner. We taught him to carry his pictures with him in the form of a book that had a strap on his shoulder. And we also taught him to be very persistent. If somebody's back was turned, we taught him to turn someone around. If somebody was behind an obstacle, we taught him to go around the obstacle. So phase 2 is what we call our distance and persistence. And what we see with typically developing toddlers is they become very, very persistent in getting their needs met. So sometimes typically developing children will go find mom or a therapist and drag them across the room to help them get what they want. It wasn't until Bob learned how to be this very persistent at interacting with somebody else that we taught him the difference between all the pictures on his PECS book. So it's not until the children have learned to be very persistent that we start teaching them the meaning of the picture. And this is, again, very typical to traditional language learning. Children learn how to get mom and dad's attention, take mom and dad to objects. And it's not until the children are saying specific words that they then start realizing, I have to say one word to get this item from mom and a different word to get this item from mom or dad. So phase 3 is essentially when we start teaching children to discriminate among the pictures. Now with Bob, the initial picture board I had for him and the initial display of pictures was representative of 4 things he really, really liked. So if I had taught him to point to a picture, I wouldn't really be sure which picture he was intending to speak to point to, because everything on the board was something that he liked. Once in a while, when I taught Bob to point to a specific picture on the board, I misinterpreted. He touched the cracker picture. I tried to give him a cracker, and he got very, very upset because no, what he really wanted was the cars. So in phase 3, we've developed some specific training strategies and interaction strategies so that we can distinguish which items the child really wants. What Bob then learned to do was, as typically developing children do when they're 18 to 24 months, they start combining words. So words like go car, stop car, drink milk, those kinds of 2-word phrases were what we start building by the time we get to phase 4. And because Bob was always most motivated by getting access to things that he wants, rather than teaching him to point to picture of its car or that is car, we taught him to point to pictures that indicated, I want car, I want raisins. Anything to add? Okay. As Bob's picture vocabulary and sentences became much more consistent, it then became very apparent to us that when I presented him with a box of cars, he wanted a very specific car. So once he was able to put 2 pictures together, letting me know I want car, we then started teaching him colors and size. So he learned to say things like, I want red car. He would put together a 3-picture sequence. I want red car. I want big car. And this in turn provided a lot of alternative behaviors for his scratching, his hitting, his pinching, his screaming. When he could get us a very specific car, he was quite happy with that. We started teaching him to answer questions like, what do you want? As a speech pathologist, I wanted him to answer questions like, what's this? What does it do? And what the behavior analyst taught me was, Bob's not that motivated to tell you what color the car is. That was a struggle for some of the lessons with him. But in the more advanced phases of PECS, specifically in phase 4, we do start teaching kids to describe what they want and to describe things that they see. So why do I begin with PECS when there's so much electronic options available to our learners? First of all, there are no prerequisites such as pointing, communicative intent, or picture discrimination. When I go into schools, I will see somebody put an iPad in front of the child that has a display of 42 pictures on it. And what I see the child doing is randomly touching pictures and then getting upset when the person interacting with them misinterprets. With PECS, there's no prerequisites such as touching a particular picture, pointing, or picture discrimination. The protocol for PECS is now designated as an evidence-based strategy for teaching functional communication. And as I said earlier, what is unique about PECS as opposed to touching pictures on a display is PECS teaches the interactive nature of communication. The learner goes and finds a communication partner, gives that partner a specific picture, so it maintains the interactive nature of communication. Most of my young learners successfully communicate on the first day. When they discover all I have to do is give you a picture in order to gain access to the things I've been wanting, that's when we consider them to be successful communicators. What is also unique about low-tech PECS is it focuses on communication without the cognitive demands of device navigation. When iPads were developed and then AAC apps for iPads were developed, we had a lot of staff and parents who said, I want him to use this now because it has a voice. But unless you do a lot of customization with various apps or devices, it becomes problematic for the learners to select a specific picture to let us know that is specifically what they want. The other reason I start with PECs, especially with my young communicators, is the majority of our children who are young start talking while they're developing, while they're progressing through the PECs protocol. But for those of our children who do not develop speech, because of the skills we've taught them within PECs, I find the transition to a speech generating device or a tablet with an AAC app much easier. So I'll let you talk about the study.
Comes up again later. So essentially, when we take a look at some of the research, and I'll go through several research studies near the end of the talk, but there was one study done by Schreiben and Stamer 10 years ago, where they were randomly assigning children to either a PECS condition or PRT, and pivotal response training was a strategy developed by them. The key is that it focuses on speech from the beginning. So they wanted to see if their particular approach, naturalistic approach to speech training, would lead to more rapid speech acquisition. And the group of learners was very unique. They were all, the mean age was 2.5 years old, so they were very young. And the children had 10 or fewer spoken words going into the study. And they're randomly assigned to these two different groups. There were 19 children who acquired PECs, and after 6 months, that group went from fewer than 10 spoken words to more than 90 spoken words, which was equivalent to what happened in the speech group. So this was one of the most powerful studies in the field of AAC, showing a large group of very young children with ASD acquiring lots of speech in a short period of time. I'll talk about some other features later.
But what was apparent to the researchers was that there were the same number of children in the PECS condition as the speech condition who did not develop any speech. And at the end of the study period, at the end of 6 months, what that meant was there were several children in the speech condition who still had no means of communication. But the children who were assigned to the PECS condition who did not develop speech, they still had a very critical and functional communication system. So the primary reason I trial PECS with all of my young learners is that the majority of children younger than 5 years who use PECS for 6 to 9 months develop speech. And what we have found through our own practice is speech develops when we teach a child through phase 4 of the PECS protocol. So when I'm trialing PECS, I am making sure that the children progress through phase 4. And if they haven't then started talking, that's when I will work on transitioning to a speech generating device. And if I look at the requirements for a speech generating device, many of the skills that are required to use it successfully are skills that we teach in the first 4 phases of PECS. They learn, I need to communicate with somebody else. I've been in classrooms where I see children by themselves pushing buttons on their tablet with their AAC app, but there's nobody around to hear it or nobody around to interact with it. So approaching a communication partner before communicating is something that's part of phase 1 and phase 2 of PECS. In phase 3, we teach picture discrimination. With a speech generating device, there is picture discrimination, but there's 2 types of picture discrimination. There's the vocabulary buttons, cars, raisins, trucks, but there's also the navigation buttons like next screen, back screen, opening, different vocabulary categories like colors or shapes or vehicles. if a child is transitioning to a device that involves just pushing a single button, that's essentially what we teach in phase 3. Pushing a multiple button sequence to have the device speak a phrase is essentially what we're teaching in phase 4. So my recommendation specifically for our young learners is trial PECs through phase 4. Phase 4 is when we start hearing children develop speech. But if their speech doesn't develop, they're far more likely to be successful with a speech generating device because they have so many of the foundational skills.
So let me go in a little more depth through each of the phases and talk about what we view as some innovative aspects in the protocol. As we said, we start with things that are highly valued to the learner. We want to, it can be a snack or a drink. It's often a toy or an activity. But what we want is to make sure that we have a very powerful motivator built in. When we look at typically developing children and their language, it's obvious that at a very young age, many children are as motivated to socially interact with other people as they are to interact with the world to get things they like. So this is an assessment based on the characteristics of an individual learner. If that learner in the beginning does not interact with other people and enjoys various items and activities, we're going to take advantage of that motivation. We are not going to, excuse me, we're not going to try to ask a lot of questions, point to the pictures, point to the items, because we're trying to have the child begin to initiate, not simply respond to somebody else saying, what do you want? Point to the picture, give me the picture. What we find, and lots of other people have found for many years, those strategies undermine initiation, being spontaneous. So we want to develop that quickly. When we begin an interaction, we simply offer the item. We show the child what's available. If we see the reach, that means they're motivated by that item. That's the signal to begin a trial, an opportunity.
And I have, in the early developmental stages of creating the PECS protocol, I tried to do this by myself. I tried to be the one who helped Bob pick up the picture. I tried to be the one who then helped Bob release the picture into my hand. And what became very apparent when I talked with Andy about the problems of that is we need to really separate the role of the communication partner and the person who's helping Bob put the picture into my hand.
Yes, from my perspective, we're separating the source of motivation and reinforcement and the source of the assistance, the prompt. That's why we split up these roles. In this scenario, as you can see in this picture, the child's focused on the person holding the item, not the person behind. If they switch, that means that other person has gotten too big in the situation, and that could be a problem. So we look for the reaction. If the child doesn't reach for something, we're going to change the item. I can't say, no, I know you like candy. You're going to ask for candy now because I saw you like candy yesterday. It's in the moment assessment. Okay, and we think about the little sequence. The child's reaching for an item and we want them to pick up the picture, reach with the picture, and release. Those are 3 little steps. And in teaching strategies, when you have these little sequences, it's often easiest to teach the last step first. So we help pick up, reach, and the child releases. Then we help pick up, the child finishes reaching and releasing. And the last thing they acquire on their own is the pickup. We're only using one picture at this point. We're not teaching anything about discrimination. The picture, if you will, does not yet have meaning. We're not teaching the meaning of the picture here. We're teaching the child, do something to the other person. Notice also the child is taught to give the picture to the person, not put the picture on the other item. This is not matching. This is not put the picture with the item. It's give the picture to the person. That essentially guarantees the interaction. In phase 2, what we realize is that parts of that first lesson, let me just show it again. You have the item close to the child, you have a picture close to the child, you have the communicative partner close, and those things are, quite frankly, a bit artificial. They're arranged to facilitate this lesson. So we need to introduce the real world. And in our pyramid approach, we do that quickly. We want to work on going into the real world quickly as we can. So we changed 2 different dimensions. One dimension is the distance to the partner. Where is that person? Oh, now we might eventually want the person to be on the other side of the room. But imagine a child who has spent maybe 20 minutes giving a picture to a person immediately next to them. Then the person gets up and walks across the room. In our experience, kids just stare. They're like it's kind of like, where are you going? Why are you there? They're not going to get up and follow automatically. So one of our teaching strategies is make changes in tiny little steps. The person takes 1 step back. That's successful. 2 steps back. That's successful. 5 steps back. That's successful. 10. Oh, that didn't work. Well, if 10 didn't work, then we would cut back to 7 or 8. So we're always trying to adjust the distance. At other times, the same thing is true about where is the picture. We start putting pictures on a binder so the child can find the binder of pictures a little easier. There's still only 1 picture on the front, but that binder starts to move gradually so the child can seek it out. The other thing we do is teach a child, take the binder with you. In this little picture, this child's binder is on a strap, so he's taking it. It's not that we say, go get your picture, go get your binder. They are taught quickly to do it. We can use 2 people here, but we can also use, as we describe, that gradual lesson, which we talk about as shape. The other thing that's important is this system, maybe it started with cars, but communication is not about cars, it's about things. So cars in one setting, crayons in a different setting, juice in a different setting. The materials that the child's interested in should vary according to the location and the activity itself. When we start teaching to discriminate, make a choice, we want to start with choices that we can understand and see very quickly. He really, really likes the car, and he's not very crazy about a sock. Okay.
It's an MP3 player.
Oh, sorry. It's a little music player. Didn't see the picture. If he reaches for the picture about the music player, upon the touch, we can give some feedback. Yes, you're on the right way. He still will exchange. But then what happens if he puts his hand on the sock? We know by experience, if I try to give him a sock, he either looks at me like I'm strange or pushes it away. So the moment he touches the sock, we would say that's an error, and we can start teaching using particular error correction strategies. We then have to move to teaching things that are equally reinforcing, equally motivating. I like the toy dog and I like the little angel figure. Both are enjoyable. So now if the child touches a picture, I don't know what she really wants. So in that situation, once she gives me a picture, I would say something like, here, take it, go for it, show me. the child taking the angel character after giving me that picture is demonstrating correspondence. And that's what we will reinforce.
Okay.
Why do we introduce this little sentence structure in phase 4? If you think about it, up until now, all the communication has been a request, but we know commenting is very important. We have to move from requesting eventually to commenting. Typically, developing children, excuse me, use their intonation. They change how they say a word, and it changes the meaning. We need the equivalent of intonation within the PECS protocol, within any picture communication system. And that's the function of I want versus later I see. Those are telling the communicative partner how the next picture is going to function.
We also don't separate I and want, because as in typical development, in English, I want is usually a single word. Wanna.
I wanna.
Just wanna.
So we use various teaching strategies to do that. We want to make sure the communication book itself is set up to have a sentence strip. Lori invented the sentence strip as a removable strip with Velcro on it to allow for multiple pictures to still be exchanged with somebody else. And research followed our observation showing that vocalization in the kids who begin to speak most frequently happens at this phase. It's not that it never happens before, but about 80% of the children who start to speak in this phase. Part of the reason there is that we introduce a little time delay after a child has put together, I want ball. We teach them to point to the pictures, tap on them while we're speaking, and then we do a delay strategy. I want ball. I know that seemed painful, but it's only 5 seconds. And research shows you need to wait 4 or 5 seconds to encourage speech. If it happens, we have a party. We get excited. If it doesn't happen, the child still communicated. So the child will still be successful in the interaction. But if they speak as well as do the exchange, there'll be a lot more in the motivation area. Those attributes are important, again, because a child might learn to ask for a ball, but not every ball in the world is one I like. I want the big ball, not the little ball. I want the one that's red. I want the one that's rough versus smooth. The one that's bouncy versus flat. So we first have to make sure the attribute is important to the child. We can assess if a child can see the difference between red or shape or location without any communication. Can the child track his favorite toy if I put it in a red box versus a blue box? Which one will he open? If he starts to open the correct box, then we say he's responding to that feature. Then we can build in reinforcement. If people were perfect up and through phase 4, they will never have asked the question, what do you want? That's unrealistic. But we want to make sure if children haven't heard and responded to that question, that they will do that. We want to make sure they can still interact spontaneously, but we're building in that question so when we switch to phase 6 comments, instead of saying what do you want, we'll do what you hear, see, smell, taste. And now we want to make sure things are interesting and novel. If you set up a boring lesson, no one's going to comment about it. So it's got to be a lot of excitement, and the outcome needs to remain social.
The other reason we create these sentence starters is in typical language development, children are using a single word to both ask for things and to talk about things, but they use intonation to let mom or dad know, I'm asking you for a dog versus I see a dog outside the window. Because our kids aren't talking, the sentence starters also provide a lot of information to mom and dad as to whether or not you're asking for this item or we're just talking about it.
The other thing that we work on, and we do not have a lot of time today to talk about them, but in our view, in our experience, there are certain communication skills that we view as critical. Learning to ask for something is critical because if you can't ask for it, you'll figure out another solution to get it. When you can't ask for help, you're going to encounter many situations where you need help. But if you can't ask for it, things will get ugly quickly. Asking to get away, ask for a break, learning to wait, follow directions, transition. All these things are critical for everyone, not just kids with language issues. Everyone needs to learn this set. Our view is we describe these as involving safeguarding. Do not wait for a child to behaviorally break down, punch me, and then say, oh, he needs to learn to ask for a break. We teach these to everyone, giving them the tools to deal with life as it becomes progressively more difficult for everyone.
When I have children who aren't developing speech within the PECS protocol, I continue to expand their language within the protocol. So I'm going to start changing the type of question. In phase 6, we ask things like, what is it or what do you see? But I want essentially for my learner to start commenting with a simple phrase.
If we think of a lesson which involves saying, holding up a pen and saying, what do you see? Or a ball. The child has to respond to both the ball and the question. What do you see? And I hold up the object. How can that child be spontaneous? Will that child simply say pen or ball on his own? Well, it's very unlikely. So instead of starting with what do you see, we might say name a toy. And if the child says ball, you say right. Or what do you play with? In that situation, both objects and the question are there. Now we take the ball away and go name a toy. Okay, there is no ball there. The child responds ball. That now is what many people view as an abstract comment. We're talking about things not immediately available. We must make sure we can do it with other objects. Instead of a ball, a train. Okay, name a toy. We do the same thing with the train. Then we say, what are trains and balls? Notice now we're switching the direction of the lesson. Trains and balls are toys. So we do this all with pictures. We don't do this with speech. The questions may be with speech, but the learner's response is with pictures. So it is possible to get kids to use pictures to respond to things we're saying, even when the item in the environment is not immediately present.
I try to remember I'm a speech language pathologist. So there are lots and lots of communication skills that we can teach within the PECS protocol. Here's just a few of them. But I'm also going to teach my children in the PECS protocol how to ask for things or how to ask questions. So as a speech language pathologist, I was taught, well, you need to teach question forms. You need to teach your children how to ask questions. And in English, a lot of our questions start with WH. So I always had on my checklist, teach WH questions. But when I'm looking at the motivation of a lot of our communicators, I have to pay attention to why they're going to be motivated to ask WH questions. But if my learner really wants to play with his tablet or his iPad, and it's not where he's likely to find it, it's not in a predictable area, I have now created the motivation for my learner to ask, where's my tablet? We teach who questions, we teach what questions. And I'm always looking at the motivation of the learner to determine which WH question I'm going to teach. In language development, we can typically predict which question is going to be taught or learned first. But in typical language development, we have different sources of motivation than we do with some of our learners, specifically our learners with autism. So I'm not going to choose a question because on a developmental checklist, it's the first one. I'm going to choose the question to teach my learner to use based upon the motivation of the learner.
Very quickly, an example might be I bring a child into a room with a few new people to him. And I say, Bob has your favorite toy. And the child needs to go and over to each person say, what's your name? Lori. What's your name? Andy. What's your name? Bob. Can I have my toy? So learning the name is crucial to getting access to something that's motivated.
This is a one of our young, well, she's a young adult now, users of PECS in Japan. Her mother taught her PECS. Her mother taught her lots and lots of communication skills. And Aki was in her teenage years when she started using PECS. She did not develop any speech. So mom transitioned her to a speech generating device and used the PECS protocol to teach Aki to use her speech output communication device. So here's one example. It made a very loud sound. Mom is helping Aki to let us know
New vocabulary.
New vocabulary. So Aki built a sentence. It was loud. I am scared. How do I get to the next slide? We also teach our learners how to express feelings. So here's another example. We didn't share sound. It's gonna work.
It's written out. So he's putting together a message for his friend.
This is a young boy in Russia.
He delivers the message. She's going to respond. And there's the big motivator. Good.
When I have a learner who is putting together a multiple picture sentence and he's not speaking, I start planning to transition this learner to a voice output communication system. So most of the systems I see in use today is the iPad or a tablet, Android tablet or an Apple tablet with some kind of AAC app loaded. But transitioning from one modality to another is a predictable sequence, but it's a sequence that we think involves steps we must actively teach. Whether a child is transitioning from PECS to speech or PECS to a speech output device, I want to make sure that they are transitioning to the new modality using all of the language that they developed within the PECS protocol. But what I also want to make sure is I'm transitioning to a system that does not provide access to fewer vocabulary items or fewer options for building sentences as the child was able to use within the PECS protocol. So if I have a child who in the PECS protocol could build a 5 or 6 picture sentence, I want to make sure I'm transitioning to some kind of voice output system that's going to allow for the child to use the same level of complexity in his language that he was able to use within PECS. I also want the system to be able to grow with the child as he develops more and more vocabulary, more and more different sentence structures. I want the child to be able to use those skills with the speech generating device.
It's important to remember that it's not just the final solution that should have at least the same number of skills. During the transition, you would never take a skill away.
Right. So the learner who's putting together a multi-picture sentence on a sentence strip with PECS, his performance is going to tell me how I need to transition. So if a learner can put together a 3 or 4 picture sentence on his low-tech PECS book, I want to make sure that I'm allowing him to build the same level of complexity into the speech output device. So the student's current communication skills within the PECS protocol is going to really inform what type of voice output system I provide the learner. I'm not going to take a child who's using 3 or 4 picture sentences and provide him with a voice output device that shows him a display of 4 pictures that each speaks a single word. I want to make sure I'm mirroring the language skills the learner has acquired within the PECS protocol. But what I want to make sure is that the new modality accommodates the entire picture vocabulary the child had acquired within the PECS protocol. I want to make sure that the rate of initiation with the SGD is the same as the rate of initiation within the PECS protocol. And I want to make sure I'm choosing a voice output system that accommodates the length of message that the child was able to use within the PECS protocol and allows additional communication opportunities and longer and more complex phrases. For some of my children, they're transitioning to talking, but I also want to look at the child's intelligibility with the speech he's developing and make sure that I'm not discontinuing PECS if his speech is still completely unintelligible to a communication partner. We just published the 3rd edition of the Picture Exchange Communication System Training Manual. Right now it's in English only. It's being translated into several languages around the world. But I want to share a couple of myths and misconceptions that we've run into over the past many, many years. What I hear from some of the AAC specialists in the United States is PECS does not offer a robust communication system. If I'm transitioning a learner to a speech generating device, a lot of times people will say, well, why aren't you just starting with the speech generating device from the very beginning? PECS has a very limited vocabulary, whereas this device I'm wanting him to use instead of PECS has the option of accessing thousands of pictures. But what I want to make sure that people understand is robust is not a feature of an augmentative or alternative communication system. Just because the system offers a vocabulary of hundreds or thousands of pictures does not mean that my learner is going to start using all of those pictures without some systematic instruction. I've had several learners that we transitioned to a speech generating device who 6 months or a year into the transition aren't beginning to access all of the communication options within the device, because what I want to make sure and what interventionists need to ensure is that the pictures are being used in a meaningful fashion. So I want to make sure I'm analyzing how my learner is using the speech generating device. I'm sure several of you have encountered learners who play with the device. They like the sound of the voice. And a lot of speech generating devices also offer the option of lots of games. And I want to make sure that my learner's not using the system as a means of play, but he's using the system as a means of interactive communication. So just as we don't give a learner a dictionary for his first book to read, we're not going to insist that we give a learner a speech generating device that offers hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures. The pictures are only important when they're used meaningfully. Another criticism we've heard is that PECS only teaches requesting. Yes, we start with requesting because for the majority of our learners, that's the more powerful communication skill. Being able to say, I want the bike, rather than that's a bike, is sometimes more meaningful to our learners. And we tend to see more challenging behaviors when a learner can't let us know what they want. Not so many challenging behaviors when they're not able to say, I see a dog. Lately, we've been hearing that PECS, because it uses strategies from applied behavior analysis, it's compliance-based. And there are a lot of myths being on social media talking about how PECS is compliance-based, therefore it's unethical to use something like PECS. But essentially, compliance means I'm going to make you do something that I want you to do. That's the opposite of what we teach in PECS. We've always advocated not to do compliance training. We don't begin intervention by placing demands on our learners. We begin teaching our learner to let us know what they want or need, and we always follow the learner's lead within the PECS protocol. We're always looking at our learner's motivation when we're teaching skills within the PECS protocol. I've been accused of being abusive because I withhold items from a learner and I make learners ask for absolutely everything. The young girl, the young woman we showed in the video from Japan, one of her favorite activities is putting together little bits of bead art. So she has a bin of thousands of these beads. She has a template and she will match the color bead to the template to build beautiful pieces of art. There are thousands of beads in her kit. I don't make her ask for 1,000 beads. So I do need to teach the learner that I have access and you have access to the things that are desired. You can sometimes get access to those things on your own. That's what independence means. But we're going to be teaching you PECS as a system of communication that involves problem solving. I can't reach what I want. I can't open what I want. So I also need to ensure that there's adequate practice within the PECS protocol. So I need to make sure I'm creating multiple opportunities. But with all of our learners, we think it's critically important to blend taking care of the learner, teaching the learner, and sometimes entertaining the learner. Essentially, there are four ways to access the things that I want. I can take them. I can ask for them. Sometimes I'm earning them. I get a paycheck. I'm earning access to a lot of the things I want. And sometimes there are people who are really nice, who just give me the things that I want. But we think all of our learners need to learn all four methods for getting access to the things that they want.
So just to place emphasis on that, does PECS teach kids to request? Some of the time they request. Some of the time they get it on their own. Some of the time I give it because I'm a nice person. So when we see these arguments that push things to the extreme, it always does this or it never does this, then we worry about the logic and the ethics of the discussion, and we want to become realistic. So let's look at some of the more recent evidence. Other people have done systematic reviews and taken a look at what's going on around the world. There are over 300 publications now involving PECs. I can't even keep up with it, and I'm a real PECs nerd, and I try hard. In the last 2 years alone, there are over 20 publications on PECs, most from outside of the United States. But other people have taken a look at PECs and its impact on communication and interaction and socialization, as well as behavior changes. Many studies take a look at various positive side effects of using PECs, peer interactions, speech, spontaneous communication, joint attention. For example, this was one of the earliest study on PECs in 2002 from the key behavioral Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, where 3 learners learned all 6 phases in an average of 40 trials per phase. So they learned all the phases, and you can see one child was under 4, one child was 10. They also documented increased spontaneous speech in all the learners, as well as decreases in challenging behaviors. As I mentioned, this study by Schreiber and Stamer, the one where we got dramatic speech increases in 6 months. The other interesting demonstration here was 16 of the 19 students acquired phase 4, 14 of the 19 completed phase 6. This is a study which began my little interaction with everyone in India. Kalyani was one of the co-publishers on this. Taking a look at 5 non-speaking children with autism. And what I really, really liked was they were counting smiling, which is something that we've been encouraging people around the world. Take a look at not only skill development, but, if you will, happiness indicators, and smiling is an excellent one. So there's more smiling, decreases in expressions
Later.
And it generalized, and the parents enjoyed being taught how to do this. Improvisational language means sometimes people say, well, if he doesn't have a picture, he can't ask for it. And well, what do children who speak do when they see a toy that they don't know the name of? They'll describe it. I want that toy with a big red hat and a long sword. And guess what? Kids with PECs do the same thing. They can use the language they have, the vocabulary they have, to describe things they want. So they don't know the name of the brown bread, that's rye bread, but they could say, I want to eat the brown square. And another study demonstrated parents could do it just as well. This was another study by a different group taking a look at their particular speech-oriented program in PECs. Again, finding no better performance by the children taught to speak. But joint attention was taught to the speech group, the RPMT group, but children in the PECs group required eye contact and social joint attention without being taught it specifically. And this was done by people who were essentially looking to show what they were doing was better than PECs. Interacting with peers, there are a host of studies showing that not only can kids doing PECs learn to interact with adults, but they could do it with their peers and their siblings as well. And in the field of medical care, there's a publication in Pediatrics talking about PECs as having moderate evidence and should be offered in situations where children are not acquiring speech.
So, as I talked a little earlier, I have worked with a speech pathologist who is an AAC specialist in creating some written transitional plans for teaching a student to move from PECS to a speech generating device. And this AAC specialist is the one who pointed out to me that the skills that we teach in phases 1 through 4 are skills that are going to be critical in using a speech generating device successfully. So phases 1 and 2, as I said earlier, when our children learn to approach a communication partner, my colleague teaches all of her learners to carry their speech generating devices to someone else or to call their communication partner by increasing the volume on their speech generating device and using the other person's name. We are also insisting that speech generating devices be used spontaneously. That's what we teach in phase 1 and 2 of the PECS protocol. And as I said earlier, picture discrimination is taught in the PECS protocol. Navigation or function pictures are what the children then have to learn within the speech generating device use. Okay. So Andy and I have been working together for almost 40 years. We've seen quite a remarkable history of PECS and the pyramid approach being implemented around the world. We're excited about the expansion of PECS and the pyramid approach to specifically in India. We're really, really thrilled to have been able to talk to all of you today and to look at some of the amazing work you are doing with many of our learners. So thank you.
Thank you so much for such an elaborative lecture on PECS. It was very interesting to see, that research evidences. It was really nice. So, sir, there is one question in the chat box. One Ms. Shankari has asked to explain the stage 5 of PECS once more. So she wants to listen to
Phase
that.
5, the first 4 phases of PECS, we are teaching spontaneous communication. So we are avoiding questions like, what do you want? We are avoiding prompts like, use your pictures, go get your book. All of those questions or directions we might be giving to the children in a speaking format are potential challenges to spontaneity. So in phases 1 through 4, we have a really persistent, spontaneous communicator. In phase 5, we start introducing, teaching them to respond to a question, because for the majority of our learners, talking about that's a ball, that's a dog, that's an apple is not a really motivating communication skill. So in anticipation of teaching children to comment in response to a question, the first thing we're going to teach is responding to a question that's already familiar, responding to the question, what do you want, by using the PECS protocol.
But the danger, if you will, is that some people now feel uninhibited. So what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And they ask it all day long. And then they say, oh, look, Lori's no longer spontaneous, as if it were her problem. She's simply responding to the change in the environment. So we must achieve a blend. We must have kids who can answer the question and remain spontaneous. And how to achieve that blend, we don't have a perfect formula, but it's something everybody has to remain aware of.
So controlling our verbal commands is very important while implementing PECS, right? We should not
Yes.
bombard too much.
Yes, what we say, it's not about whether you speak or not, it's when. When do you speak? What is the impact of your speech on the child's communication? And be aware of it is what we're asking. It's a good or bad thing to do. It's how does my talking impact on what the child's going to do?
How to make a PECS board or book. First, you need pictures. I laminate them or I cover them with clear contact paper to make them durable. I do use a lot of Velcro. I wish I had invented it because I want the pictures to be manipulable. I want the learner to be able to take the pictures off a display and bring it to someone. So I have used pieces of cardboard that I've laminated and put Velcro strips on. These are the pictures, the PEX books that we have developed over the years, but lots and lots of vocabulary on different tabbed pages. I used to do this in paper form, but what we found out was the paper forms, even though you laminate them, they get destroyed within a few weeks. So I'm trying to find some durable material and Velcro so that the pictures are manipulable.
There's a question about sometimes it's difficult to find a reinforcer. I think many people focus on motivators as things kids like. We also want you to consider things kids need. I have a learner, she loves ice cream. She loves ice cream, but she will not touch the ice cream with her fingers. So she needs a spoon. So if I give her a bowl of ice cream, but no spoon, she is motivated to ask for a spoon. Should I say she now likes spoons? Does she have a spoon collection at home? I don't think so. She needs the spoon only when the ice cream is available. If there's no ice cream, she essentially could care less about spoons. That's fine. So we want to expand on using motivation. In discrimination training, we don't have a lot of time today. These are some of the things we hope to work with you and offering other opportunities to learn about error correction strategies. But if a child essentially makes a mistake, the first rule, by the way, is giving immediate feedback on the successful response. So as soon as the child touches the correct picture, we're going, ooh, we're letting the child know even before the exchange, that's the right direction. If he gives us the other picture, we go through a little practice and rehearsal. We'll have him practice to correct. We'll distract the child, do something else, and then immediately practice again. So we talk about 4 steps to that error correction sequence. And our experience, 80, 90% of the time, kids are continuing to make mistakes. It's because staff can improve on their error correction strategies themselves. But we might change the nature of the picture. We might change, there are a number of other alternative strategies. We just don't have time to describe them all now.
A valuable resource is pex.com. And when you log into pex.com, you're going to be given several choices for what language you want your information in. So the question about certification, go to pex.com, choose a language you're comfortable with, and then you will be able to find a lot more information. We have done some certification of individuals in India. That's usually conducted, well, it's conducted in English through our office in England.
Yes.
Participants, any other questions? So, ma'am, I have a question. So, PEX is now available in the application form also, right? Can you give us some details of it? PEX application?
Oh, well, Lori has developed an app called PEX Talk, and it has many of the features that one would expect in an SGD with literally thousands of pictures available. It looks like a PEX book, so the transition is relatively easy visually. It's got the same tabs. We also have features built in, like the delayed vocal feedback can be built in. You can adjust the time. You could vary the size of the pictures. You could change the language. You could have at least 2 different printed words on each picture for children, or bilingual, multilingual.
So this is an example of the PEX app. Oh, help me, Andy.
That's fine.
It has a sentence strip. It has the tabbed pages. And what our learners do is build a sentence, by selecting pictures that get added to the sentence strip.
Throw. It's throw.
And there's a speak button to activate the voice. Right now, PEX Talk is available in 14 languages. You can go to pextalk.com to find out more information about it. You can also find information at pex.com.
And we're working with other people around the world to add more languages as well. So let us know what people are interested in.
Yes.
Okay. There is
And it's
another.
available for iOS and Android as well. So either format, in a tablet format. Right now, it's not available in a phone size. That's just a technical issue for us at this point.
I tend to transition my learners to PEX Talk or some other AAC app after phase 4, because as we said earlier, there are so many skills that we teach through the phase 4 of the low-tech PEX system that are easily transferable to a speech generating device. I find it hard to teach device navigation and language. So my preference is to teach language or communication through the low-tech PEX protocol. And then the only thing that needs to be learned when we transition to a speech generating device is the navigation features.
I think our perspective is it's never an all or none. It's not, you can only start with PEX and never start with an SGD. But we also think, saying you should only start with an SGD and never do PEX. Both of those are not logical. We have to assess the individual skills. Are there some children who have certain skills that might make acquisition with an SGD rapid? Yes, look at it, probe it. But essentially predetermining you must use this or you must use that, that to me is being insensitive to the individual you're working with.
I've worked with many students that when I met, they were already using a speech generating device and they were failing. And there were a couple of reasons they were failing. The primary one is all the navigation demands of a speech generating device. Many of the button pushes, many of the pictures don't represent vocabulary. They represent things like next page, verbs, pronouns. So I find it difficult for kids to learn both the navigation and how to communicate. So that's why my preference is to start with something low tech like PEX. And if the children don't develop speech through phase 4, then I'm going to transition rapidly develop speech through phase 4. Then I'm going to transition to a speech generating device. But the transition I'm finding is very, very easy because they already know how to communicate.
And there are several research articles of people independent who have essentially backed up Lori's observation that given certain PEX skills, a transition to a device is easy. If they have none of those skills, acquisition of is definitely slower.
When I have a student who is struggling with a speech generating device, the first question I'm going to ask is, are his difficulties with communicating or with navigating all the buttons? And if I don't know the answer to that, I'm going to have a more difficult time determining how to solve that problem.
One more comment about SGDs. I know everybody likes them because of the technology and the voice, but in fact, there's no research in over 40 years showing the voice output is important to the learner. Think about it. All you would need to do is demonstrate that if you turn the voice off, it would change the user's performance. I can find only 2 studies where people turned off the voice and neither of them demonstrated any impact on the learner. I'm not saying it has no impact. What I'm saying is research has not demonstrated the impact. So for me, it's a learner by learner issue. Are you listening to the voice and hearing it the way I do? I know I'm listening. It's a voice to me. What is it to you? For some learners, I'm sorry, it's noise. It's not a voice. And that's what we have to pay attention to.
So another question. So sometimes reinforcement, they like previous session, doesn't interest them anymore. So what to do in those cases?
Well, again, what we're hoping is that will create opportunities to go into some of these issues about teaching strategies more deeply. But the short part is never go into a session with one and only one reinforcer. I come with a bag. I come with lots and lots of reinforcers, and I never expect that the child will, go today with what he liked yesterday. So every single session starts with, "Hey, what are you into today?" And even moment by moment, I like candy. I like candy. I don't want candy. I mean, every learner does that.
I do a lot of free choice opportunities. So I have a basket that's got 7 things you like in it. The one you choose first of all is going to be what we use for the first lesson. But I'm presenting the basket frequently because just like Andy and I have 3 grandsons, their preferences change from moment to moment to moment. So I don't want to assume that what is preferable for one learner at this very moment is going to also be preferable 3 minutes or 5 minutes from now.
We understand the time pressure many professionals are under, but our rule is no reinforcer, no lesson. And if I make you do it because, well, you're supposed to tie your shoes, it's 10 o'clock, or you're supposed to do PECs, it's 10 o'clock. If that's the reason to do PECs because it's 10 o'clock, you will do something weird. That's the only word that I have to describe that.
As a speech pathologist with regard to service delivery, I've done a lot of work in schools where I'm only available to this child for 15 minutes twice a week. And if I'm available on a day he's having a bad day, maybe he's not feeling well, his shoes are too tight, I don't have any opportunities to teach. My preference when I'm working in the schools is to spend my time in the classroom.
There's a question about grammar. And the answer is yes, at the appropriate times. So as typically developing children are learning to vary grammar to give what they're saying a little more meaning and more specificity, at that point is when we would introduce it for a child using pens.
With a speech generating device, the more advanced apps offer a lot of grammatical lessons. So I can do a present tense verb, I can do a past tense verb, I can do a future tense verb. But then I have to balance that with how many buttons are you having to push to deliver this grammatically perfect message. And I find a lot of my learners stop using the device when the demands get too high, when I'm requiring that they use all the parts of speech, that their verb is conjugated, that they have all of the morphological markers on their words. That kind of effort is when I see a lot of children abandoning their speech generating devices.
If we watch how parents and other people interact with children who have 50, 60, 70 spoken words, typically developing children, what's acceptable grammatically for those children? And to me, if it's acceptable for those children, then if a child has 50, 60, 70 pictures, then we should have the same acceptance criteria for grammar.
But I think we have to constantly balance the demands of the device with the motivation of the learner.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many children stop using their speech generating device because it's just too complex for them.
So another question from Rangasai sir, how do you expect AI to influence PECs?
We're just starting to learn.
Yes, we have a lot to learn in that field, both
Yes.
in how it might impact the learners, how to impact on teachers. We're actually developing a workshop on how teachers can use AI to generate better PECS lessons and pyramid lessons. So I think it's going to have a bigger impact on staff training right now than on kid use. But that may be because I'm limited in my thinking.
And the question about can people in India get trained or certified on PECS? Yes. Again, I recommend you go to PECS.com. And if there's a language that's appropriate for you, we can do certification and PECS training in that language.
The other certification beyond PACS is what we call pyramid certification, pyramid classroom certification, which is also an international process for us, where teachers, speech pathologists, OTs, PTs, paraprofessionals, everyone on the team learns how to use the pyramid with all the children, kids using PACS devices, sign, speech. And we would love the opportunity to talk to everybody in India about what that would look like.
So, in your experience, sir, how long it will take for a child to move from the phase 1 to the final 6th phase?
Well, in the Schreibman study, there were 19 children, and in 6 months, all of those children got through discrimination into phase 4. 16 of the 19 in 6 months completed phase 4. So those are some very good guidelines. Now those are very young children, 2.5 years old. If we start PACS with children who are 5 and 6 and have had no formal schooling before, will we get the same results? Maybe not. So age and current skill level and history of children will influence all skill acquisition.
What I find is that progressing through phase 3 at least makes for very adequate communication. Once they can discriminate between pictures, sometimes I have learners who are not motivated to put a number of pictures together. It's no longer meaningful to them. So we don't say that you have to go through all 6 phases.
One of the observations in Peru, the program in Peru had a very strong emphasis on parent involvement. So when we were teaching staff to do PACS, we were also working with the staff to teach parents to do PACS. Some families did a great job, and some families did not promote PACS as much. When they followed the kids who learned PACS, used PACS only at school, they learned PACS at a steady rate. Kids who were using PACS at home and school acquired the skills twice as fast. So that's why we've always involved parents in getting kids to communicate at home and in the community as well as school.
Do you provide any specific courses for parents? Communication partner training programs from PECS?
Yes, we invite parents to participate in our full 2-day initial PECS workshop. We've also done some modifications of shorter talks where parents introduce them to the major themes. So it really depends on what, sort of how intense an exposure the parents want to the training.
Participants, any further questions?
Thank you.
A source for a lot of videos of children using PECS is our YouTube channel, PECS Global on YouTube. We've posted many, many videos of children and adults using PECS, and several of those videos are training for people who want to implement PECS.
Yes, the caution is go to our website for that, because there's research showing most of the PECS videos on YouTube, unorganized, 70% of them are actually not showing the proper protocol. So it's kind of dangerous to just find Mary's PECS video on YouTube. We have a lot available.
Any further questions? If not, I request Dr. Usha Dalvi, Vice President without Portfolio 2024-2026 of ISAC Executive Board, to talk a few words about ISAC India chapter and to deliver the vote of thanks. Usha ma'am?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody, and good morning, sir and madam. I think we have really disturbed your morning, you know. Uh, I'll just take few seconds to give a brief introduction about Isaac India chapter. This chapter was established in 2008 with the mission to spread awareness about AAC in the community and also to share the resources and make AAC accessible to individuals with complex communication needs. Isaac India chapter has professionals from paramedicals, allied health sciences, technology, IT, so different special education, parents, and also AAC users as their members. At present, we are a small group, and I urge the participants to become members of Isaac India to achieve its mission. The chapter brings out a newsletter every 3 months and provides updates on AAC in India and also at the global front. For more information regarding Isaac India chapter and its membership, please visit our website www.isaac.org.in. You can also contact Dr. Vinita, who is our secretary, at secretaryisaacindia@gmail.com. So we are definitely, progressed from the time we started this. We have created awareness, but it is still not sufficient. And I want everybody to join in this movement. Thank you. Uh, Vote of thanks. It is my great pleasure to thank Dr. Andy and Miss Laurie Frost for their very comprehensive, practical, and informative talk. I thank our president, Miss Bhavna, for her unconditional support in all the activities of the chapter. I thank Professor Rangasai for introducing our speakers today, uh, which gave us the idea, like, how much goes into achieving or uh, what to say, establishing communication. A great thanks to our participants for making this webinar a successful event. Last but not the least, all the webinar team members, especially Ms. Arya, Ms. Kalyani, Ms. Vinita, and Ms. Sangita, who organized this event. Thank you all. Thank you, Madam, Sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It was very nice meeting everybody. We hope
We
to do more
really
together.
enjoyed the session, sir. It was very
Yeah,
nice.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Have a great day ahead. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, sir.
Dear participants, please provide your feedback. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. I think we missed asking them, well, how would they like us to go forward? So that was something, they started with that, no, how we go about handling or introducing or collaborating with the ISAC India chapter. I think we should go on to get that kind of